Karma is not a fest. Fontelo Talks, in partnership with the 232 Dot Initiative. Session 3. Anno Bitte HOVIND is the project director and chair of the Future Library Trust. Over the past 20 years, she has worked at the interface of art, culture, and business, and is a passionate urban developer who believes in transforming the city from the heart.
Good afternoon. Thank you for accepting our invitation, and it is really a pleasure to meet you face to face after, a time of being engaged in the Future Library project. Thank you once again. Anne Bitte HOVIND.
Thank you for inviting me. It was almost correct.
Almost correct, thank you. The practice was not enough, clearly, but thank you once again. This is a set of conversations, very informal in essence, about projects that somehow allow us to look into the future. And the Future Library project, it is one of those projects. For me, of course, I believe also for you that started the project and maintained it, or is it not so?
Yeah, that's correct. I've been involved in it from the very beginning, commissioning Katie for proposing a project for Oslo, and it's been 9 years already since it all began.
And the Future Library project, for those who haven't heard of it, is an artistic project that has a larger context of the development of a neighborhood or a small part of a neighborhood in the city of Oslo. Mm-hmm. And it implies the plantation of a forest and the commissioning of a manuscript from an author. And each year, a new author and a new manuscript is delivered throughout 100 years. After that time period, the manuscripts will be published. Is that correct?
Yeah, and it will be published on the trees that are of paper made of the trees that are growing now.
How and why does such a long time and long span project comes to be? Well, first, someone has to propose it, of course, but accepting it is quite a challenge.
That was challenging because when we commissioned Katie, we knew, of course, what kind of artwork she was doing. Many of them are quite extraordinary, and many of them is about time and deep time and takes long time. But I think even for her, this is a very exceptional work, actually. So I had no imagination of what she would propose. I was quite shocked in the beginning because, of course, it would be my job to make it happen. And so when she first said she stayed in a cabin in a Norwegian forest for a week, and then she said, I have this perfect idea for Oslo. And, after all, I've been working in the development of the harbor. It's quite, everyone can imagine what that is looking like, what the waterfront development looks like. So, of course, when she said it's going to last for 100 years, I work in the construction business, and the first thing that hit me was, not that I was going to be dead by then, but actually how to convince my board to invest in something where everything is uncertain. It's very hard to have construction people, property developers, investing in money that they can't see the end of, and we can't control everything. So the risk assessment, which I'm used to doing in work, building hospitals or airport, which I also have been doing, is totally different. It's like developing or building an airport, you have to kind of take control of all the risk elements. Mm-hmm. But here you almost have to not take control of the risk elements to make sure that you don't close doors too early for anything to evolve and to happen. That was a really serious task. At first, I didn't dare tell the trust, to be honest, in the beginning. And then she wanted to plant these 1,000 trees, and that was also totally out of scale and money. Where can I buy the property to develop, to plant these 1,000 trees? It's that's totally way out of my budget and my imagination. So I really, really was kind of in shock, but I guess I have some experience in trying to deconstruct a task like this, to think, where is it wise to begin? So I figured 100 years, last thing, I can't cope with it, I'll be dead and all that. And we still exercise this, how to cope with our mortality, and to let go of all control. Like, for instance, what will happen to each of the trees? Don't think about worrying about it, because and there's so many elements. So I figured this forest is most important. So that was the first thing I tried to solve. And when that happened, I kind of understood that this might gonna happen.
Yeah. Sorry, when you say the forest is the most important, a lot of the media references go after the artistic part of it. The concept, of course, it is very unique and very interesting, or go after the notion of the authors or the manuscripts or the secrecy. Because the project has that secrecy veil upon it, because no one knows. When you say the forest, what challenges were there to the forest? When will the forest be a forest? In terms of those who want, we know when the books will be books, 100 years, but when will the forest be a forest?
See,
Sorry?
and I think this is, I grew up on a farm. I come from the deep forest myself, and I grew up on a very old farm. And I had to do the forestry with my father when I was young. So the perception of a forest is, for instance, not an individual tree or anything. And my perception of the forest is actually to grow and to maintain and to harvest and to plant new trees. And so I think for me, it's not a static thing. So for me, the forest has always been there.
Okay.
We cut the old, that's my dog.
We can stop now if you will.
No, someone's taking care of him. She. But I think, back to the forest, because so we cut the old trees because it was an old forest, and so we cut the old trees because they were ready to be cut. And we took samples from around in the forest, and we replanted the small ones. So we haven't introduced any new ones or anything. We just did it naturally, And so the forest has, for me, always been there. The forest is each individual tree, but it is also the collective of trees, if you understand. So the trees are getting quite big. They're already 7 years old now.
The first stage, and before we go back to the library itself and the notion of the library itself, the first stage was a development project, pure and simple, to develop an area that had a container harbor.
Classical industrial harbor, like any city, I think.
Yeah. And the notion was to make it public. It has a lot of. Sorry.
It is a complex. It might be hard to translate to your context, but in Norway, the railroad is state, and the harbor is also public. So, and the public and the railroad, the harbor and the railroad was next to the harbor, of course, and the water, the ocean. So the deal between like the harbor authorities and the railway authorities with the municipality was to move the harbor further out and to move the tracks of the trains. And then the contract was to develop houses and a new city and transform this urban desert to a new city with all kinds of functions. and to raise money to finance the new harbor. So that was kind of the idea. And so what happened is that when they made the master plan, it was totally empty. So they had to plan the public spaces, where it's going to be. So and they had to finance building the public space. And wherever there's public space, there's mostly art, but they're usually drop sculptures. They're usually sculptures that we can read as art. And we thought that it's going to be a lot of them anyway in that context, because it's the financial district and all that. And I think the reptile decision about art is actually to choose a sculpture. So everyone knew that that was going to happen. So what we really wanted was something relevant for people's urban lives, and that could offer something different than sculptures like that. So it was a very open process, and the artists were invited to do research in context, and we didn't. They had kind of it was totally open. So that's why we ended up with this very open, crazy idea. And we also we ended up with another wonderful artwork that has made had a big impact on the city of Oslo, which is the Future Farmers urban farm called Losetter, where it's now an independent organization. It's actually paid by the municipality. They hired a city farmer permanently for the rest of their lives. And so and it's a beautiful bakehouse, and it's a very participatory artwork. It's very different since it's been developed through participation. So Future Farmers and Amy Francischini, they develop the works through discussing and sharing and participating and all that. But for Katie, she has an idea. So the participation comes afterwards. So today we have pilgrims coming to Oslo. We have pilgrims coming to the city, to the forest. We have pilgrims coming to the new public library where this beautiful design room is. And yeah.
The public library is where it's the room where the manuscripts are is at the public library.
That was another challenge that worked out as well, because we needed a place to have this manuscript. A lot of people misunderstand. I think that we dig them down into the soil. We don't in the forest. So an important part of this work is actually when we commission authors. We can come back to the authors later, but we commission one author every year and to write a new manuscript. And this manuscript is supposed to be published, be unpublished and unread until 2114.
Unread also.
Huh?
Also
unread. Yeah.
Okay.
Nobody can read them. And so we have to find a way where to store them and guard them, until 2114. So the authors come to Oslo, and a performative part of this work is actually then to walk to the forest from the parking lot, which is the last stop on the underground. We walk there together with the author, and this is in the footsteps of the previous author. So it's a very important ritual.
Okay.
And I think that's partly why people enjoy this work, because it's based on a ritual. We do the same thing every year. And people take their grandchildren, their children, their families, their friends, and it's become a pilgrim to walk. And then the author hands over the manuscript in the forest in the ceremony. But after that, it's put into now a beautiful designed room in a new public library in Bjørvika, where the harbor is, where the development is, on the 5th floor, and it just opened in June. On the 5th floor, we have the artist and the architect have designed. It's hard to describe. Personally, I became so emotional every time I walk into it. It's a silent room. It's a contemporary room. It's a very secular room. But it's like a small cathedral. And each manuscript gets a small box with a glass in front, hand casted. And so the manuscripts are put into that. So it's a growing, literally growing manuscript in that room. And the room itself is made, it's like walking into a tree. And the room itself is, of course, made out of the wood that we cut before we planted the new forest. So it's become a very beautiful silent room on the 5th floor in a new public library. It's not open yet, but it's going to be open now. So you're welcome to come when COVID is nicer with us.
Yes, yes, because it would be a nice tour, and because you mentioned something that's very specific to the future. We have rituals over the past, not dwelling on today when speaking about the future, of course, but over the past few months we had a change of rituals or an interruption of rituals, and some others were created eventually. But the design of the Future Library project in itself decided it would not impose, but to offer or to suggest its own rituals. How much of that was upfront, or was simply organic and was created the first 2, 3 authors? How did it came to be?
The performative part, walking into the forest, came as part of the work. One ritual which is now coming is how to enter the room itself. Because it's a very small room, and luckily, or of course, a new public library is extremely welcomed and popular. So there's lots of people. So our challenge when we saw that coming, of course we did that before it opened, but it's just trying to imagine how can we conserve the part of the work which offer you this contemplating space, a silent space. It can't be like a queuing up and a lot of people in there. Mm-hmm. So what Kate is now working on is the ritual on how to enter. For instance, take off your shoes before entering. Because I think rituals helps us kind of prepare and to get into the state of mind. You need to be able to take it in a way. So I think maybe we have to test it out, but I think taking off your shoes is one way of entering, which helps you, but it also helps the people outside to read how many people are there. If there's already 4 shoes, don't wait in line for the next. Yeah.
Yes.
So it's interesting how not everything was decided. Some of this was very explorative. So this part is kind of explorative, that we need to experience how people will use it. Because remember, when Katie proposed this work, we had no idea this enormous reception across countries, ages, ethnicities, religions. It's a very secular ritual, and so I think it touches something we need and are in need of now as human beings, no matter where we're from.
Before we take a break because of the time, one question you never answered, or you didn't answer in the beginning. How did your board take it when you finally took the proposal?
The board is it's a really interesting story how you make things happen in like this, because my board had no idea about art, but before that I've been through some challenging discussions with them, so they were kind of prepared. But I didn't tell them about the 100 years before. I had a forest, I had the room, I think I even had Margaret Atwood on board. And because it's too much to tell, and I think because most of us will think it's impossible. I even thought it myself. So I think to take some steps to ensure some things, that's when people start dreaming and believing. And so when I actually proposed it, I had done a lot of preparation individually, but also had a lot of things in place for this to happen. And also to develop the language, I think it's important. What is durational work? What does it take? What do we have to worry on this side? Because I still don't have all the money for 100 years. If I were to solve that before we started, nothing would have happened, remember? So you kind of have to develop a language and some mental models on how to cope with these kind of challenges. But that's why we got this beautiful work, because we did exercise. And today, I think a lot of people are referring to Future Library as what I've heard Stephen Hawking even said, and now several people start thinking about it as a cathedral thinking work that is actually started by one generation for the next one to finish. And actually, we need more of these works now. That's what our future is about.
You were saying that when you took it to the board, you had a lot of the building blocks together in order to present the language, the notion, although not everything. One thing you said was Margaret Atwood had already eventually already accepted. Was it important, or was it was it absolutely needed that some of the authors would be the best possible, or that was natural? Was it searched for, or was it natural? What kind of decision?
What do you mean, the selection of authors, or do you think about my board?
No. The selection of the authors.
Yeah.
Because they
obviously
are very good.
Yeah. What a fantastic situation. Honestly, that's part of the dream come true as well. I still remember where I was when I got the message about Margaret Atwood saying yes. It's like this physical experience you won't forget, because I was so happy, because of course what we didn't know in the beginning, it was how would another artist respond to being part of another artist's artwork. Yes. Would like authors even like the idea, And then afterwards, people been asking us, what do they think about not being published before they're dead? So that's another question. But for us was like, how would they respond to being invited? But I think it took Margaret Atwood like 2 days. So she was just, yes. And I think that was really how I heard her say many times is that it was her gut feeling, Either you like it or you don't like it, and she liked it. And so that, so one thing is the selection process. We are still learning. We, of course, as anyone would have, a long list, and we discuss, the board and the trust discuss. And but it's interesting how every time we selected an author, the list totally changed, because it's so influenced kind of by selecting one. Then something else like happened in the configuration, if I could call it that. So it is really to select one author at a time, and authors, of course, have different time schedules in their lives. If they write a novel, then don't answer emails. I promise they don't reply. So we still have it's a very organic process.
Mhm.
But as it is now with these wonderful authors and the way they define themselves as part of this family tree, and how they speak about hope and future and their motivation of being part of it, it's a dream, and and still there are so many authors out there, and after all we choose just one a year.
Here.
So please bring forward names, you know. That's okay. Yeah.
One thing you also mentioned was about the notion of multi-generational projects and artwork. Um, this brings about something you also mentioned the first time we spoke over the phone when we addressed the invitation. It was about trust. Do you would you use that word to define the project? Not only future but trust. Trust is strong. Trust is a
So it
strong
is,
concept.
I don't remember the first time I replied that to a journalist, but I remember it again as a very felt reaction, because I don't, if you, it, it is, because I don't have any other choice. We don't have any other choice than trusting, you know, it's very strong. And on the other hand, it's a mutual trust. And that's when I can get quite emotional, because they also have to trust us,
Yes.
the coming generation, that we actually take on these kind of works for them to fulfill, you know. So it's a mutual trust, and but that is really what our future is about. So it's strong, but that's the strong narrative about trust is what makes this work so special, I think. But I'm open for other interpretations, but I think it's about this basic need we have as human beings, intellectual species, that we actually need to trust and to be trusted.
And I will take this from your words, but I believe that that would be something you said or touched. You have received that trust so far. I know it hasn't gone a generation, but you have received that trust from the ones in Oslo, the young ones that now are a bit bigger and know what the project is.
It's growing, of course. So this is not quick fix.
Yes.
Trust is not quick fix. it's really about credibility, believing, hoping, and trusting. So I think this work, it's a growing matter. It's an organic process to gain the trust and also to give the trust. So I think we are going there. And I think since this work's reception has been so out of what we ever dreamt about, you know, I think it's hard now to stop it because we have a whole world guarding it.
Yes, and that was the notion. When you say it has been well received worldwide, what were the expectations?
I don't know. It's I think I kind of almost have forgotten, but I think when you do a public artwork in like traditional transformation of a harbor in northern Sweden of the world, not Oslo, I mean, it's a very local thing to do. So what kind of expectation could you have? Not as it happened, at least. And but it's fantastic. It's a very serious matter too. I feel a very big responsibility to look after and guard the work as well, and it's so precious in a way, and it's growing that way too. And with each author coming on board, to hear their motivation for saying yes, it's very special every time. So yeah.
About the authors, I don't know. You invite one author, and the next year the author delivers the manuscript. Is that
Yeah,
usual?
the author gets 1 year to write the manuscript. So in 2 weeks' time, we will announce the next.
Okay.
Before Karl Ove Knausgård comes, he lives in London, so he will come and hand over his script 5th of September. Hopefully, right now it's okay with the COVID-19, but hopefully we can go on with the plan A. Mm-hmm. We would have to take him from UK to Oslo, even though he's Norwegian. But right before we will announce the next one, and then this author will get the whole year until the next handover to, and that it has been in May until now, and hopefully it will happen in May, or it will happen at least around latest August, September.
Just an explanation. Eventually, we are 2 weeks from the 5th of September because this is being recorded. So eventually, when this
almost go like this. I will
Sorry?
take no. I can almost tell you then. But maybe it's the day this go online, you know, that's when it's published then.
Yes, we will be
then
online.
Then you can tell people.
Yes, but we will be online after the public and formal.
And then you can tell them, unless they have missed it, you know. Yeah.
100 years from now, do you? I know this is a long shot, but eventually, would you like to know that other multi-generational projects, not reptilian like artworks, were being made throughout the world? Would that?
Yeah, I understand your question, and I have to say that this work has kind of been life-changing to me in that matter, because I'm kind of on a mission, but because I strongly believe that I need to speak about this work, to share the work, to inspire people that it's actually possible to do these long-term works, that is challenging our perception of life and time and everything. And I think it's crucial, actually. So hopefully there will be lots, but not only artworks. It's also, we have to kind of stop doing all this short-termism decision making. We need to go back to where we were. You know, it's only 2-3 generations that have been hooked on this short-termism. So I think most city planning, most sustainable planning is long-term. And so I think to discuss how to apply this in our daily life, even in my life, I think it's so interesting. I've heard several now speak about deep time and how we as humans can exercise our awareness of that. And there is one method that I read about. It's an anthropologist in the States. She is dead, but she proposed to think about our presence as not here and now, but 200 year span, 1 year behind and 1 year in, now 100 years
100,
into,
yes.
Yeah, 200, because that's the time where we can actually remember and be confronted of our people that we are accountable for, like my great-grandparents, my grandchildren. You know, this is my presence. And when you start doing that, you will change your decision making. And I grew up on a farm, and you don't plant trees for your own sake.
Yes.
You plant it for the next generation, and you have to sustain the soil and the forest to make it livable for the next generation. So I would strongly believe that it's our perception of time which we need to cope with now. Through understanding soil and water, we need to be literates and to become future literates through connecting these dots and think of long-term thinking and generational thinking. That's where we're missing out.
Anna, thank you very much for your time, for your words, for your kindness, for receiving this invitation and also accepting it very, very fast. Thank you for everything. I do hope someday I can go to Oslo and see all those things you speak about. I will surely be on the lookout. Thank you very much. And until soon.
Thank you for inviting me, and really, pilgrims, please come to the room and to the forest as soon as the COVID-19 is calmer.
We will. Surely we will from Portugal. Yes, we will.
Yes, that's good. Yeah, okay.
Until soon.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.